welcome to Grumpy Vegan Grandad. Dan here. This video is all about the final Manchester pig save of the year. But more interestingly, it was attended. I think this is the third time Richard's attended. Richard is the CEO of the Vegetarian Society in Manchester. It's a massive society that does a lot of good stuff. They actually gave out hundreds of vegan meals to homeless people last year, and I think they do it every year. They may do it more. I'll have to find out about that one. But I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on this. So watch the video, watch the interview with Richard, and listen to what he's got to say. And then I'd be interested to see what your thoughts are down below on what he says and the situation. So, yeah, please, here's the vid. Take three. Okay, so we're here at Manchester Pig Save. It's, what date is it? It's the 19th of December. It's the last Pig Save of the year. Aaron, you're one of the organisers. Tell us how the year's gone and what has Richard got to do with this?
Well, I'll start with the year, then I'll do the introductions with Richard.
Okay.
So this year's, it's been a busy year. We've done a lot of vigils, a lot of events.
What events?
And what's interesting this year, a lot of new people come. So I think the community in Manchester is coming to realise what happens here. So that's nice to see new people. And it's quite symbolic that obviously this is the last vigil at the end of the year. So being Christmas is a time of peace. And what a better way to end the year than come here and show some compassion and love. If that's what Christmas is about, then this is the best place to be. And then I'm going to introduce you to Richard. Richard, shall I let you explain who you are?
I can explain, yeah. So I'm Chief Executive of the Vegetarian Society. We've been based here in Manchester since 1847. We're one of Manchester's best kept secrets, I think. But we're a national organisation. In some ways we work internationally. I've been CEO now for about a year. I'm actually vegan, so I'm a vegan CEO of the Vegetarian Society, and I think
So how does that work, Richard? That's a pretty obscure thing to do. You're a vegan in charge, running a Vegetarian Society.
I'd argue it's not...
What's your agenda?
I'd argue it's not obscure at all, to be honest. The agenda is to really look at vegetarians and vegans as part of a whole. So rather than falling out amongst each other, there's 90%, probably more than 90% of the population still eating meat, and that's where we need to be directing our efforts, not falling out amongst ourselves about who's holier than who. And actually, for a lot of people who becoming vegetarian is a massive transition for a lot of people if you've been eating meat. And I think we should celebrate that. I think we should celebrate anybody who's actually taking a decision to reduce their meat, to become vegetarian, to also become vegan, to become an ethical vegan as regards leather and all the other byproducts. And that's where I am personally. I would probably say I'm more on the ethical vegan thing. It's very much a lifestyle and a philosophy rather than a diet. And I would like to encourage more people to see it that way. But we are a broad church, so I would like our members to be concerned meat eaters, flexitarians, vegetarians and vegans, because I think together, the only way we'll solve this is together, not by throwing rocks and necessarily shouting at people because you're not already vegan.
I mean, bringing people together is a good idea, yeah, I agree with you. And on a whole, the way you put it, it is sort of like, that's the word. We've even got divisions between vegans at the moment about who is, but this holier than thou sort of idea I don't agree with. However, what would you say to vegans who say, well, if you're pushing for vegetarianism and flexitarianism, you're diluting the vegan message?
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that flexitarianism is the answer. I'm not necessarily saying that stopping at vegetarian when you know how brutal the dairy industry is, for instance, is necessarily the answer. What I'm saying is that there's a transition going on in our food system at the moment. So I actually wonder at some point whether we might just lose the labels of vegetarian, vegan, flexitarian, because actually the food system's just transformed. So already you're getting milk proteins being made on industrial premises, not needing a cow. There's already conversations around things like cultivated meat, which is grown in a lab, which I know is controversial for some vegans and vegetarians, but actually for the group of people who will never give up meat, if they can have their meat and it just comes without animal agriculture, I'm not necessarily sure I've personally got an issue with that.
But it's already there, Richard. I've just had a vegan steak last night. I've had vegan chicken. There's vegan everything. There's plant versions of every single meat dish out there now. So it's already here.
It is. The plant-based meats are getting a lot better, certainly when you compare it to 5 or 6 years ago. And I always say to people, think forward 5 or 6 years, where it's going to be
I agree
again,
with you on that one,
you know?
yeah.
But for some people, there's an ideology. They cannot give up meat. Let's face it, we're a meat and two veg country. It's cultural. People have grown up with it, and you're trying to change their entire life almost, because diet is so personal to people. And I just think plant-based clearly is going to play a huge role, and is playing an increasingly huge role. But I think we also have to look at the fermentation products for dairy, which is only just coming online now, really. Perfect Day, an example in the States of a company that are doing this. Cultivated meat, another. And I do think, if you read people like George Monbiot, you know, I like George Monbiot, I think he's a brave author. He talks about a transformational food system. And obviously he's very much now geared, having been vegan and then going back to eating meat and now being vegan again. He is very much against animal agriculture and is now saying the world needs to go vegan. I just think we need to think a little bit about what we mean by that. What we actually mean is a food system that doesn't involve animal exploitation. And there's a variety of ways that you can get to that. And the other thing is, it's not going to happen tomorrow. As much as I would love for it to happen tomorrow, you've got to think of it as this is a medium-term solution that we're aiming at. You know, we're talking about 2030, we're talking about 2050.
Well, I'm going to just pick up on a word that Richard said, and we don't use that word enough. You know, you were saying about the vegetarian society, vegan society. What society should we, you know, what about rebranding? There's a word we should embrace: the transition society.
Transition society.
You know, and really what we're saying is it's about helping one person go from a meat-eating diet to a fully plant-based diet, being a vegan diet. But all of that is a transition. And being a vegetarian is part about in that transition.
And the thing is, I don't have all the answers. I don't believe any of us have got all the answers, because you don't know what the solutions. You don't know what's going to be online in 5 or 10 years. But I suspect what will happen. What I'm aiming for is a diet, a food system globally, not just in Manchester or in this country, but globally, that can feed 8 billion people, which will be more by 2050. So everybody's got access to food, because it should be a universal right. And that food is not exploitative, so that actually from our point of view means doesn't involve any animal exploitation, because we should, as caring human beings, be way past that stage.
Should be hearing those screams.
And we should be hearing the screams like you've got in the background there. I mean, and if you go round the back when the pigs actually enter the gas chamber, you know, it gets worse. And not enough people know that, and that's why we're here. But the other side of it, of course, is a food system that's low carbon, that doesn't have the greenhouse gas emissions that are associated particularly with animal agriculture. And so I don't really mind how we arrive at that food system, but it has to be one where A global population could be fed because that's just a right. That's the justice part of the movement from a human perspective. One that doesn't involve animal exploitation. And honestly, if that's cultivated meat in a lab, cultivated dairy in a lab, and a massive plant-based offering, fine. I think that's arguably the way forward. And then one that doesn't have the current greenhouse gas emissions associated with just hearing the scream.
Can you hear that?
Pause a second. No, it stops.
No. I mean, they're terrified.
Well, of course they're terrified. They're in an environment, they're put into an environment that is alien to them to start with. They're abused just merely by being caged and put into a situation where they can't escape. Then they're put into a different scenario on the wagon, and then they'll be put in yet another different scenario where they can hear their friends and others being murdered right in front of them. They can smell the blood, they can hear the screams.
Well, we often ask people, don't we, how they feel about animal suffering. We don't, as much as it's important to know how they feel, it's how they feel. Their lives matter to them, their suffering matters to them, and that's that whole thing about empathy.
It is.
I think the point I often use, particularly when I'm giving talks, is to make people think about the concept of dogs and pigs and why you value one in society but you don't value the other than as food.
Yeah.
We live with dogs and cats, but we live with companion animals that we treasure. They're part of the family. We're distraught when they die, and yet pigs, which a huge number of studies now have proven.
There we go, idiot.
That's after the screams. After that screams that you heard there.
And then you hear that,
And that's the other end of the spectrum, unfortunately, isn't it? But if a pig is as intelligent as a dog, if not more intelligent than a dog, and actually when left alone in the wild forms family groups, they're incredibly emotional, sentient beings, why in the 21st century do we allow ourselves to brutalise one and treat another completely different? And what's worse is we get so upset, for instance, when you see the concept of eating dogs in Southeast Asia, and yet we don't get upset at the concept of eating an animal that's as intelligent and as emotional and sentient as a dog over here.
The conditioning is strong. It's a really strong
huge.
conditioning, and it starts at a very, very early age. So the first thing we're taught in life is speciesism.
It is.
And it's such a short leap from speciesism to racism to homophobia, because we are taught to treat someone different because of how they look. So we can talk about animals because they're different. We treat pigs, cows, sheep differently than dogs and cats because of how they look, and that's it. And it's such a short leap to treat people in that manner because of the way they look or the way they act or the way they live their lives. And that's where we need to sort of start pushing veganism is at a very early age.
I think you're right, and we do. I think as humans, we're almost conditioned to find difference rather than similarity in some ways, because it almost helps you identify yourself. But I think the other part of it, and this is something else I talk when I give talks, is we're brought up with a view of the farm. So, most children's storybooks are very bucolic. They're often mixed farms. The animals look very happy. There's pigs and chickens and geese and cows, all living happily together. And actually the modern farm is anything but that. And the risk, of course, is, particularly in the economic times we find now, farmers will look to try to keep their profits going. They're in business at the end of the day, and the way you do that is you intensify, unfortunately.
You put more animals in the same space, you'd keep X amount of animals. So therefore it's getting cramped. They need more drugs, they need more injections, they get less care because there's so many of them. And the margins make a big difference to
it's a good point. And we talk about some of the other threats to humanity like antibiotic resistance. A huge part of that is because of the dosing with antibiotics in intensive animal agriculture. You have that many animals stacked together. You don't use antibiotics when they get ill. You use it when they're healthy to try and prevent them
getting ill. Yeah, exactly.
And it's a massive overuse of antibiotics.
I think it's 85% of the world's antibiotics are used on farm animals. And they're already finding now antibiotic-resistant bacteria in the stomachs of surfers on the south coast in Torquay.
I think I've read a stat that 1.3 million people die from antibiotic resistance.
Well, they reckon by 2050 antibiotics will be useless. And that'll mean if you cut yourself...
I think they mentioned the figure 10 million. 10 million in 2030, but at the moment I think it's 1.3 million die through resistance.
I think you've got to think back to an age where major surgery was, sometimes you just couldn't do major surgery, and if you did, it was touch and go whether you'd survive it. It's only because of antibiotics that you can carry out most of the huge operations that we can now, and I think we forget that at our peril. It's only 1929 when penicillin was discovered, and so we've had arguably less than 100 years of living with the benefits of antibiotics. I do think it's one of those things that needs to come to the surface much more when we're campaigning as organisations.
Definitely. Well, listen, Richard, thank you so much for giving me a little bit of your time.
You're very welcome.
I mean, obviously, I disagree with some of what you say, and some of what you say I agree with, but I do agree on one point, is that whether you're vegetarian, vegan, whatever, we need to come together and we need to increase the numbers or we're going nowhere. We are increasing in numbers as vegans. We need to keep the message out that it is an animal rights thing, not a diet thing, because we are diluting that message now, because there's more than food. There's fashion, there's makeup, there's animal testing, there's a lot of different industries out there that are using animal products because they're in a massive supply. We get called hypocrites because we use phones and cameras and TV screens and cars which use animal products. But if the animal agricultural industry wasn't here, they wouldn't be using these products because they'd be too expensive, so then they would find an alternative. Until that point they won't. So but yeah, it's really great you're here. There's another truck here, so I think we'll nip over and we'll have a look at the condition of these poor animals.
Can I just say before you switch off, this time, this being a period of like celebration and Christmas and peace on earth, peace begins on the plate.
Peace to all.
Yeah.
Not all men, all. Yeah. Peace to all, and that includes animals, yeah, definitely. Thank you so much to the pair of you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Well, I've come to, this is my second vigil, and it was I came to this because I know Richard from the Vegetarian Society, the CEO there, and he recommended I come to this because I've made a film, which is about the journey that is very similar to what we're seeing here today, where a few hundred pigs at a time, a truck a time, are coming and being led to their slaughter, being gassed and then killed for our food. So it's took me a long time to come to one of these, but now that I have, it makes my film even more potent to me, and I wrote it, so it's
So
just
are you
seeing
vegetarian or vegan?
I'm vegan.
Wow. So the Vegetarian Society, Richard got you to come here. So he is making waves, because I'm a bit dubious about Richard being a vegan and sort of the CEO of the Vegetarian Society. I'm thinking, what's going on here? This is a bit strange to me. But he is making waves, and he is sort of.
Well, I think people make the transition, don't they? Or are likely to go from being vegetarian to vegan.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's quite a tough.
It's quite
not
a leap.
tough, but it is a leap. Yeah, sure.
I mean, vegetarianism is classed as a diet, whereas veganism is a philosophy on animal rights. There is a difference, but I can see that because I didn't go vegan. I sort of transitioned, and I think a lot of people over 30 and Generation X's and etc. I think that's the path that a lot of them will take, because it's a lifetime of conditioning and brainwashing that
yes,
causes
agreed.
This.
Agreed.
But,
absolutely.
But yeah, well, listen, thank you for talking to me. Thank you for your input. You've got a YouTube channel, I believe.
I have.
You want to plug it?
Yep. Well, I'd like to plug the film as well. So the channel is Kitten Pyramid, and on there's a series called Veggie Nuggets, which is basically doing what you're doing, really, which is interviewing people from different walks of life about the subject. And then the film's coming out on December the 29th. It's called Kiddo, and it's going to be premiered on the horror channel Alter, ALTER.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
It's all right. Thank you.
Scott.
No problem.
My name's Sally. I've come today to support Manchester Pig Save because I like to try and show some comfort to the pigs. I've always noticed the trucks passing by on the motorway and sort of seeing them up close and personal here, and being in the vicinity of the place, close proximity. I try and show some comfort to the animals, and to see them all and not forget them, try and remember them, and support what Manchester Pig Save are about, supporting, working towards a more vegan or vegetarian diet, and not allowing this suffering for the animals, having to, no doubt the animals are looked after well on the farms most of the time, but the end place of having to it come here is so upsetting and unnecessary, I feel.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm Millie, and I come to Manchester Pig Save to pay respect and empathy for the animals that go into the slaughterhouse. It's about connecting with why I'm vegan, and I think it really reinforces and reminds myself why I'm vegan and why I'm doing it. And if anyone who wasn't vegan came to the slaughterhouse, I think they would be really impacted by it, and it would definitely change what they would eat meat and flesh of the animals.
Thank you.
I'm Sylvia. I've been vegan 5 years now, and I've been an organiser at Manchester Pig Save for 4 years. I've seen lots of changes since I've been here. And some people, they come, visitors, and they say, well, what good are you doing? Because these pigs are going to die anyway. And yeah, they are going to die, but they haven't got a voice. And we get lots of footage, we get videos, we get live streaming, and then we get out there on social media, and we are their voice, we speak for them. And I'm never going to stop doing that. I'm never going to stop. And I think in the time I've been coming, in the 4.5 years, there's less pigs come now for slaughter. This company have now gone on 4 days a week, and they used to be 5 days a week, plus they used to take pigs on a Sunday as well. So somewhere along the line, I'm hoping really that we have made a difference. But what I do know is that we speak out for these animals.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm Cleo. I've been a vegan activist for more years than I care to remember now, and I'm here at Pilgrims today because I'd like to make people see that these pigs are sentient beings. They're not food. They are the creatures that deserve their life. What we do to them is just, it's wrong. And I mean, what part of seeing them going in here makes your mouth water? I mean, really, is it food? If you don't look at them in this state and desire to eat them, it's because they're not food. When you see something that you want to eat, your mouth waters. We just want to stop what's happening. Be kind. You know, it's the season of goodwill, but not for the animals. And it's wrong. It's the biggest injustice that we have. And when people argue with us, it's because they feel guilty, because they know that we're right. And they don't like hearing that you shouldn't be eating animals because they're not food. Well, you know, the fact that we've always done it isn't an argument. The fact that they're grown for it, they're born for it, isn't an argument. There isn't an argument. Just stop eating the animals and let them live.
Thank you.